What is going on, guys? And welcome to episode 146 of the Armchair Fantasy Show. I'm your host, of course, Jeff Lambert. You can follow me on Twitter at JeffLambert77. Presented as always by GoingFor2.com. We are live every Tuesday on Facebook Live, Periscope, YouTube, of course, syndicated in all major podcast networks, and in the Going for Two app for iOS and Android. I'm here as always with my co-host, Mr. Ryan Searfoss. Man, Ryan, how you doing tonight?
Good, man. I'm glad we were able to get the show off.
Definitely. I'll explain that to everybody in just a second if they haven't heard yet. Also joining us tonight, you can see him on screen, Angelo from AngeloAnalysis.com. You can find him on Twitter at Angelo_fantasy. Angelo, how you doing tonight, man?
I'm doing great, man. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. I'm excited.
Yeah, definitely, man, definitely. So real quick, just in case y'all hadn't heard, the reason we're doing this the way we are is because I'm actually quarantined in my bedroom. I got tested for COVID-19 yesterday, so I can't go to the studio, so I am stuck in my bedroom, and I'm currently streaming on my iPad. So this will be a little bit of a different show tonight, but we're still going to make this happen tonight. We got a lot of questions from the mailbag that we're going to be answering tonight. We'll get Angelo's help on some of these questions here. So yeah, Angelo, just real quick, go ahead and give us a little bit of an idea of what you do over at your website there, and how long you've been doing this, and anything else you want to plug.
Sure. I mean, I've been doing this for a little while now. I work in human performance and biomechanics. So a lot of my day-to-day is with working with athletes and doing a lot of film analysis myself for my own career. So that's kind of where the film analysis part comes in with fantasy football. And I try to give the best insight I can on some of the movement properties of some of these top prospects we're seeing, like Jerry Jeudy is one of my favorites in this class from a perspective. When I post all this on AngeloAnalysis.com, the site live about a month ago. And then on my Twitter as well at Angelo_fantasy. So you can find all my threads, all my tweets on some of these players on there, as well as some of the ones on the second-year players like Dave Montgomery, Miles Sanders, Josh Jacobs, among others. But yeah, those are all on there, and it's been a fun ride so far, so I'm looking forward to more.
Nice. Good stuff, man. Good stuff. Yeah, I'm completely honest with you. When Ryan mentioned you, it's been about a month and a half ago. I didn't know a whole lot about it. I followed your Twitter feed a little bit, and I like what you do over there. So good stuff, man. Glad to have you on the show.
Appreciate it, man. Likewise.
All right. Typically, I hit the drop right now. We do news or notes, but we don't have no drops, so we're just going to jump right into the news and notes.
Cool.
The first one I got on here is the Packers are impressed with former CFL star Reggie. I messed his last name up. I think it's Begleton or Begleton. So Ryan, I'm going to go to you first on this. Should we care about this player? Is this someone that we should be looking at in fantasy right now, and sort of a deep dive player?
It could be a deep dive. I think it's one of those things. It's way too early news. You just kind of put them on that watch list for fantasy and see if anything pops. If you're in a super deep league, maybe, but I'm not really too familiar with them myself, and I went pretty deep this year, but
You go that deep.
I didn't get that deep.
What about you, Angelo? Any information on this guy that we need to know about? Anything that you may have seen that you've seen in a little bit of time that we've known about him?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing here is it could give Aaron Rodgers another interesting option as a receiver. So that's the biggest thing for me is there's so much unknown surrounding the Packers receiving core, besides obviously Adams. So it's always interesting when kind of another name gets thrown into that hat. We're going to kind of see what happens and what shakes out during training camp and preseason. And that's a really good time to see where him and some of those other guys are landing on the depth chart. Because Aaron Rodgers is going to have to spread the ball around to more than Devonta Adams. So anyone who goes there, I've heard Taylor Gabriel's name said multiple times. Any option there is an interesting option because one of the greatest to ever throw the football is throwing them the football. So for me, it's an interesting option. So I guess we'll see what shakes out in training camp and preseason.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm all in on Allen Lazard right now.
What was that?
Allen Lazard's my guy for them this year. Hopefully.
Yeah, I think for this guy, I think definitely deep league. If you got a taxi squad spot you want to stash him on, I think he's more of just a speculative ad and just to see what he does. And you mentioned training camp and preseason and all that. Let's hope that we get that kind of stuff this year.
Yeah, that's correct. That's true.
Yeah, so I mean, it's a tough thing right now. I think only if you got an extra spot just chilling there and you want to try to add him as a speculative
Right.
and go that route. But
For
otherwise,
sure.
I'm probably not going to touch him go after him too hard.
Right.
Next thing on my list here is Colts head coach Frank Reich came out and said he wouldn't be surprised if running back Nyheim Hines has a 10-catch game this season. I've been kind of buying Nyheim Hines everywhere that I could. Ryan, are you buying the hype right here on Hines? Do you think that this is actually going to be a thing this year?
Yeah, Hines is a guy who I've kind of believed in for a little bit longer than this, and this just kind of puts it where he needed to be because he fits the role with them. Yes, they have Jonathan Taylor, who's going to be a huge part of the offense, and Marlon Mack, but Hines is a pass catcher, completely different than them. He's a guy that can move around. They can put him in the slot. Outside of Hilton and possibly Michael Pittman, the receivers are average. Paris Campbell was a first-round pick, but he's kind of not shined yet.
Yep.
But either way, Hines gives them a big playability. He can play underneath. They can run him. They can move him around. I think he can be an offensive weapon. And I could definitely see the 10 catches a game being a thing for him. It may not be consistently every week, but he's going to have games where he's going to surprise you with some points.
Yeah, I think I wrote an article just recently, sort of like some buy low guys, and Nyheim Hines was one of them. And I looked back, I think 5 years, 6 years to the Chargers team, and pretty much every year except for 1 year, the running back for the Chargers with Phillip Rivers was the number 2 receiver on that team. There was 1 year that Melvin Gordon wasn't because they had 3 receivers that had 90-plus catches. But Melvin Gordon, you going back even to like Darren Sproles and obviously Tomlinson, and then even more recently you got Eckler last year and Danny Woodhead. So I agree. I think that he's definitely going to be interesting. What are your thoughts on him, Angelo? Are you buying Hines anywhere in any of your leagues?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I think he's the best pass catcher of the bunch, at least the most proven one. Mac hasn't really shown the ability to be a consistent pass catcher in the NFL, at least role-wise. And collegiately, he was actually a pretty good pass catcher, and he was highly regarded in that vein coming into the NFL. But I think what we can kind of count on now is it's going to be a committee, at least for this first year, until Jonathan Taylor takes hold of that backfield and runs away with it. But even so, in the beginning phases of this, I think we can see Hines in a pretty significant PPR role, similar to what we saw with Theo Riddick a couple of years ago. I think that's kind of where we can see him. He's not going to have a super high ceiling, but I think he's a solid floor play for bye weeks, and he's a good bench stash for sure. And if you're kind of hurting on your dynasty rosters for a running back that doesn't have a ton of upside, but can get you 7 to 12 points a week, I mean, I think you could find worse options than Hines.
Definitely. I actually just bought him in a 16-team league. I got him for the $315, which is
I like it. That's solid.
Yeah, which is free.
Yeah, basically free. So I was excited about that trade for sure.
Yeah.
All right, I guess got one more note here. This is a little bit of an older note, but we hadn't talked about it yet on the show. I wanted to get to it. The Falcons are sort of unsure on Todd Gurley's health. Obviously they can't do physicals and everything else. So,
right.
Could Ito Smith actually be a thing this year? You think, Angelo?
Man, I don't know. I mean, for me, Todd Gurley's knee is a degenerative issue, so it's not going to get any better, right? And we kind of all know that now. But I don't know if Ito Smith's going to be a thing. For one, their offensive line last year, run blocking wise, was in the bottom tier of the NFL. If that doesn't improve, then you can kiss your Ito Smith cheers goodbye. But Todd Gurley was brought there to be the bell cow and provide a different dimension to that offense as a rusher that Freeman couldn't provide at his stage in his career. I'd be shocked if Ito Smith was the one who came out of this. They might add a back in free agency. There's a couple out there like Lamar Miller, Carlos Hyde, add a better complementary option to Gurley. That's what I would expect them to do before we get too deep into the summer. But I don't think Ito Smith is going to do much as a secondary option. Quadre Allison was actually the one getting a lot of the goal line work in some of those stages of the career in last season when Freeman wasn't performing very well in his stints with injury. So I think we can kind of bank on Smith not having a large role, but I could be wrong. But we should kind of see what they do in the rest of free agency if they sign it back, and also what Gurley's health looks like, and that's what a lot of it depends on.
That's a good point. Yeah, and like you said, with the camps and preseasons, you probably won't see Gurley at all. Like we probably
Right,
won't see Gurley
exactly.
until week
Yeah.
one. So
Not
that's
until week one.
yeah, it's going to be tough. We had a question real quick, Ryan, on this subject from Kyle on YouTube. He wants to know, is Brian Hill the better handcuff than maybe Ito Smith or even Quadri Allison to Todd Gurley?
Yeah, I was actually going to bring him up. I like Brian Hill. I think he can give him that between tackles role. I like him and Olsen more than Ito Smith. I think Ito's going to be more involved in the passing game if Gurley's out. And we don't even know if he is hurt, man. That's the thing. It's all speculation right now, and they're going off of, hey, we actually haven't had medicals with our staff. They had them with the Rams, not with them, before he got traded or before he got sent there. So we don't know if he's actually out or they're just talking. But I like Hill and I like Olsen. Olsen's going to get the red zone work like Angelo mentioned, and I think Hill can work the rest of the field, and they'll just go full-blown committee if there's no Gurley, and they don't get that anybody. But they probably should if that's the case.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, I think that's going to be a backfield to sort of watch if we do have any kind of camp or training camp or anything. That's going to be something you're going to have to watch.
Right.
If you're a Gurley owner and you're looking at to get his handcuff, you're going to have to watch those closely to see what's that role. All right, let's go ahead and just jump right into the mailbag. This is the first time we've ever done sort of a mailbag show, so we're going to kind of play it by ear here. But we'll kick it off here with Dan Turner on Facebook. He's got two questions here, and I'm going to start with the first one. We'll go to you, Angelo, first. Where do you rank Jalen Reagor as far as Dynasty PPR rookies go this year? I know our rankings, everyone has the rankings out right now, but with the landing spot and everything else with the Eagles, where does Reagor fall for you?
For me, Reagor is in the 5 through 8 range for me. I mean, I think obviously he's an excellent athlete, but I think the bigger thing is he fills a big gap in Carson Wentz's led offense here.
Yes.
We saw in the latter stretch of 2019 how much they struggle getting the ball down the field. When Greg Ward Jr. is your best option out there, that isn't pretty. But I think what Reagor can do is he can stretch the field, but he's a true 3-level threat that's going to have to grow into that role. But I think he can be that for Philadelphia. And I think he's also going to add value as a punt returner. I think that's another area of his game that he can potentially make a Pro Bowl in early on in his career is as a punt returner. That doesn't help fantasy very much, but I think his ceiling is pretty high in Philadelphia. But for me, he kind of falls through that 5 through 8 range because I think his floor is fairly safe. I mean, he doesn't have much, I would say, even elite or tier 3 or so competition in Philadelphia right now as receiving targets besides Zach Ertz, really. So I'm a big fan of Reagor's game, and I think he can come in and potentially be a dark horse rookie of the year if all shakes out right.
Yeah, I think I'm going to steal a line from our guest from our last show. We had Ray GQ on, and he kept saying,
he's a big Reagor fan.
He loves Reagor.
Yeah, he loves Reagor.
But he kept saying that he wants guys that have an opportunity to get an opportunity, and that's Reagor right there. I mean, he has the opportunity to get the opportunity. I think that he can definitely be the starter there week one. So yeah, I think that's definitely. I think I have him as far as receivers go. I think I had him 4. At Justin Jefferson 3, I think I had him 4. Overall, I think I had him at like the 8-9 range. If we include the running backs and everything in there, so that's kind of where I had him. And Ryan, I think you kind of had him in the same spot that I had him, right? Sort of in that 3-4 range. Is that right?
Yeah, he was my wide receiver 4, so right around 8 or 9 overall.
Good stuff. All right, he's got a second question here, and it's about the running backs, the second-year running backs. If we take Jacob sort of out of the mix, because he kind of already had his breakout season, which second-year running back do you think takes that next step into maybe an RB2 or a low-end RB1? For you first, Angelo. You got any of these guys from last year that you think can have that next step?
Oh, I think the most obvious one's Miles Sanders. I think, with Philadelphia's offense and their offensive line being so consistent over the past few years, I think he's probably the best candidate to do so, especially in the back end RB1 range. I think another one's David Montgomery. I think what we saw from him in the latter stages of last year is what we can see this season potentially, especially with better quarterback play and Nick Foles being under center. I think the biggest thing we have to understand with Montgomery is it wasn't so much his play. Yes, he had some mistakes, especially with his footwork in front of line of scrimmage and behind line of scrimmage. But I think for me, it's he's bottom 3 quarterback play, bottom 3 offensive line. That's that's not a recipe for success for a rookie running
Yep.
back. So I think we might see him in the 300 touch range, and that the volume there is huge in fantasy. So I think we might see that. And the biggest thing we look for in dynasty is, can that guy have a 3-down role? And Montgomery to me is what we call a rhythm back. So he needs, the more touches he gets, the more he gets in a rhythm, the more he can see things from a perceptual cognitive standpoint to help him make decisions on the field. And we saw that, like, there's a couple drives, if you want to look this up. There's a drive, the first drive of the third quarter against the Chargers, and the first drive of the third quarter against Detroit Lions in Week 17. Obviously, backups were playing. But we saw what happened when the Bears fed him a sizable workload. He was able to get into a rhythm, break off some chunk gains, and he's not the fastest guy in the world. He doesn't have a great athletic skill set, but he's tough to bring down. If the volume is there, the path to RB2 relevance is there. And then in 2021, we might not see Tariq Cohen there anymore, who gobbles up 90 to 100 targets a year, right? So if that happens, and if Tariq Cohen's gone, and he had probably Tariq Cohen had one of the most inefficient receiving seasons ever from a running back in 2019. Nagy supposedly is a little upset with him and what his role was and how he executed. So if he's not there in 2021, he's a free agent. Montgomery could step into a 3-down workload, which could even mean back end RB1 potential just based on volume alone. But that's something to watch out for. I mean, we'll see how the Bears offense shakes out. That's a big part of it. If their scoring potential goes from bottom 3 in the league to top 18, that's a big boost for everyone in that offense, including David Montgomery.
Yeah, good point there. And I like your call on Miles Sanders too. And I just realized Dan Turner is an Eagles fan, so he
he loves it.
He got to talk about Miles Sanders too, so a little tricky way of getting us to talk about his Eagles. But Ryan, is anybody that we haven't discussed that you think that could have that potential jump into that top tier of running backs?
I was 100% going to go with Montgomery there. I think he has all the opportunity in the world. He had 242 carries last year, started 8 games. Like, he wasn't considered the starter until then last year. Yep. I think he has a ton of volume. A lot of the other backs in the class from last year's season were complementary pieces, even to the point where, like, even Devin Singletary, who played well, I think he's still going to be in a complementary role where it's very similar. I think your upper echelon guys are Jacobs, Montgomery, and then Sanders. I'd like to believe that Damon Harris could get the opportunity, but I think he's kind of buried there. But he'd be my deep hole. But I'm all in on Montgomery this year. He finished an RB2 last year without any help.
Yep.
And Nick Foles automatically should help him out a little bit.
Agreed. And yeah, I was going to bring up Damien Harris as well.
Yeah, it's a good one.
I love Damien Harris so much.
Yeah, I mean, I've been buying him everywhere because you can get him free everywhere.
Yeah, dirt cheap now.
And if you look at their roster right now, I mean, pretty much every back they have is in their last year. I mean, I think the only one that signed through next year, it may be James White. I can't remember. I know a lot of them are basically free after this year. So yeah, step into a big role in 2021, if not this year. So. Definitely buy me some Damien Harris for the price you can get him for right now.
Right.
All right, let's go to the next question we have here is from Aaron Schill, our friend on Facebook. And Ryan, we'll start with you this time first. You got any dynasty buy lows? Give us one buy low and one sell high for this offseason so far.
What am I buy lows right now? I honestly think Stephon Diggs, his perceived value in the fantasy world is much lower than it is. He's been a guy who's had consistent play in an offense that hasn't passed the ball very, very much. They've been a low-volume pass offense. Yes, he's been efficiently targeted, and he's had the opportunity to perform with that, but still not a ton of volume. And he's still not going to get that Buffalo, but they're going to throw the ball deep a lot more. Josh Allen likes to show off that big arm, and he really didn't have that before with Kirk Cousins. I think he still has that potential to be a high-end wide receiver, too, who can give you huge games, especially with that deep ball potential. If people right now just have no value for him, they think his career's in the shitter, per se, with it.
Yep.
And we saw John Brown have a great year with him, and John Brown's not the receiver that Diggs is. He should take over that one role there, and I think he's a guy who can perform.
Agreed. What about a sell high? You got anybody you're getting rid of right now?
I think when the sell highs right now could be someone like a Tyler Boyd. I like him as a safe player, and he's getting a ton of hype with Joe Burrow there. But his volume, he's still going to be a wide receiver 2 as a ceiling there. And with Green coming back, he's going to have the wide receiver 1 role. And I think that once that offense is going, and even once Green's gone, that's going to be T. Higgins as the premier wide receiver there. And Boyd's going to be a complementary piece. You can still get a higher value for him than that just because of the fact Burrow is there. Yes, he's a solid floor play, but he's a guy who you can help flip to get something bigger.
Yeah, I like that call. 'Cause I think Boyd actually is a receiver too. I think that he's better as a receiver too, but I think
agreed.
Situation he gets for that wide receiver 1 hype, and I don't think he's that guy. I think that AJ Green will have it this year as long as he can stay healthy, and then T. Higgins takes it over next year. And Boyd is good. Don't get me wrong, but what you got to pay for him right now is a little bit too expensive for my taste. Yeah, if I have him and I can move him for a good piece, I'm doing it.
Right.
What about you, Angelo? Give me 1 buy low and 1 sell high. You got.
Oh man, I think probably the biggest buy low for me is Tyler Lockett. I mean,
I love that.
You know, he had the 4th most receiving yards from the slot in 2019 for eligible receivers, and he only had 1 game before his injury under 10 PPR points. So I think the consistency with Lockett that we wanted from him, he was more of a boom bust player earlier on in his career. I think we're seeing that now with his move to the slot in 2019. I think if he's healthy, he could provide, you know, a stable wide receiver 2 for you on the back end side. My sell high is it's a guy I love, but I think the prices I'm seeing for him are outrageous, especially in my leagues and people are offering and trades that are flying around. It's AJ Brown. You know, for me, Tennessee's tough to evaluate because it's a run first offense. And it's just generally going to just have a ton of target inconsistency and volatility in general. So I think for me, that's the toughest thing to kind of predict what his target share is going to look like on a week-to-week basis because, you know, they're going to ride Derrick Henry. I think we all know that, right? I think A.J. Brown could step in and be a superstar in this league, and I think it's trending towards that. I was a big fan of him out of Ole Miss. But, I mean, you can get him for a premium right now.
Yep.
I think now might be the highest you can get him and another guy like Miles Sanders too is their price is so high right now. Obviously you love the player, you love the situation. But, you know, sometimes it's if you can get a really good package for it. I know he's a younger player. If you're a contender especially, you know, the Titans might not provide the most consistency offensively. For Brown to be a consistent wide receiver 1, he might shake out in that back end wide receiver 1 range, potentially, but on a week to week basis, we might not see the consistency that you would want from one of those guys on your championship roster. That's tough for me because I love the guy, but that's a tough one to say. But I think right now, I mean, the price is never going to be higher to me.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I love A.J. Brown like you do. I love him, but
man,
the volume is going to be tough to predict week to week. It's just he's going to have those games where he might end up the end of the season as a wide receiver 1, but he'll have those weeks where he's not doing a whole lot of anything, and then you have a week where he'll explode and be huge. So it's kind of tough to predict that kind of that production there.
I did the Titans projections today, and he was super hard to do because he was unbelievably efficient last year. There's no way in that offense he's going to continue to average 20 yards of reception. He averaged 20.5 yards of reception, and that's huge, and that's not sustainable. Tyreek Hill's the fastest guy in the league, and he doesn't even touch that. It was kind of a fluke there. So unless he makes up for his volume, there's going to be a plateau on his scoring. So I agree with that a lot.
Good point. I just had 2 real quick ones that I just mentioned, so we don't run too long.
Sure.
So my buy low, and I mentioned it before in this podcast, and I know Ryan knows, and he's a big fan. But Miles Boykins is my buy low. I think that he has a great year too. I think I saw a stat, and I haven't gone back to verify it. And you never know what you read on Twitter if it's true or not. But on all the snaps he played this season or last season, he had the block on half of them, which is an insane amount of, for a receiver to play that much snaps that he played and then to have to block on half of them. It's crazy. I think that what was that, Ryan?
That's probably right.
Yeah.
I probably watched almost every game this year. It's probably right.
Yeah, I mean, I think I wrote up an article on him last year before the draft, and I did say that, watching him in college, he sought out linebackers to block. When he had to block there, and he kind of did the same thing here in the pros, and I think they kind of took advantage of that with that running offense. But I do think that the Ravens offense takes a step forward. They pass a little bit more than they did last year. They're not going to turn to a passing offense by no means, but I do think that they spread a little bit around. I think Boykins can have a breakout season. And it's funny you mentioned Miles Sanders as a sell high as well, because that's also who I had as my sell high right now. He's getting all kinds of hype all over Twitter. We've seen it in the past with Eagles running backs. They just like the RDBC. They like to have two, sometimes three, four running backs touch the ball in the game. And I mean, even Darren Sproles last year at like age 97 was still getting touches. Makes me a little bit nervous there because he's being basically looked at as an RB1 right now, and that's a tough price to pay. I think if you're getting Miles Sanders, if you can get an RB1 value for him right now, I'm definitely taking that right now, I think.
Right. 100%.
All right, let's move into another question here. I'm going to butcher his name. He's been on the show a couple of times. John Battaglino. I can never say his last name, so I'm not
Battagliano.
Battagliano. Thank you. Yes.
Did you just hate Italians? It's okay.
So he wants to know how do we see the backfield in Tampa Bay shaking out with all the hype around Keyshawn Vaughn right now. Of course, you still got Rojo there as well. And Ryan, we'll go to you first. What are your thoughts on this backfield here with Tampa?
I think it's going to be a frustrating year with it. Arians showed with what they had last year. They've been following the hot hand. There were games where when Rojo ran well, they kept him in, and then there was games where Barber did the same. And I can see it being a lot more of that mixed in with some Ogunle. I can't pronounce his name. Ogunle.
Oh yeah, Gumbawale or something like that.
Yeah, with him catching the with him catching the ball on the backfield because they showed him that. But I think they're going to rotate those backs and follow the hot hand. I believe in Rojo coming back. I still have a little bit of hope for my draft crush I had on him back then, but it's neither guy is that exceptional of a back, and I think it's just going to be a rotation. That's going to make nobody happy.
Yeah, agreed. How do you see it, Angelo, shaking out?
Oh man, it's tough. I mean, he mentioned Gumbawale, but I mean, it's hard to really dictate what's going to go on in that backfield. I mean, here goes this for me. Ronald Jones is the most talented back in that backfield. I don't think that's a true question. I think on the service level, athletically at least, Ronald Jones is a pretty good back. However, he struggled in pass protection, and he's also struggled in ball security and decision making as well. So that's the type of stuff that Keyshawn Vaughn does pretty well. Keyshawn Vaughn is by no means a flashy back whatsoever. Very works well in his own scheme, one cut and go, very north-south. But he can protect the passer, and I think that's where he kind of shined in college as well. As he was one of the best backs in blitz pickup in his class. Whoever can protect Tom Brady will be seeing the field quite a bit.
Yeah. Exactly.
Could that might be a Gumbawale as well. I mean, whoever the third down option there is too. That's the one that could have a ton of value. And Ogunbowale was, I remember at this time last year, or a little later than this, we were projecting Ogunbowale to potentially have a role. And I think we were a year too early. So Ogunbowale could have a role on third downs. I mean, I just don't think we know yet. And until we kind of see how training camp shakes out, if we do have a training camp, and how preseason shakes out, we might not know. But I'm trying to pick up a good amount of Gumbawale shares, and I'm also trying to grab Ronald Jones everywhere I can because Keyshawn Vaughn's price has risen so high.
Yep.
I don't know if he's going to live up to that. However, if he is the lead back in Tampa, he could be a mid-range RB2 if he gets the lead role, and that's huge for his. If you get him at that price, that's still huge, right? So. We'll have to see. I mean, I'm interested to see, but Rojo is definitely a guy I'm buying because if he marries his talent, with his skill set, with him being able to pick up blitzes and him making better decisions between the tackles and working on ball security, he can be a lead back. But we have to see, and I'm really interested to see how that backfield's going to shape out.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. Like you mentioned, it's the one that can protect Brady the best that's going to be the one getting the snaps because you get Brady blown up on a missed read. miss
Right.
a block, you're on the bench for a while for sure.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that value that price on Vaughn right now is extremely high. I just did my draft this past weekend, in my main dynasty league, and he went at the 108. He went over guys
Wow.
and Jalen and that hype is there. Everyone thinks he's gonna be like the James White of this offense, and I don't see it. I don't see him being that player. So
Sure.
I agree 100%. It's gonna be tough to kind of figure this offense out a little bit. All right, the next one we got is from AJ Smithington, who's actually watching the show right now. He's commented on a few of the things we've mentioned, but on Facebook, he wants to know. He's talking redraft already, so he's way ahead of the game.
Love it.
He's looking at some late round QBs with a top 15 type potential.
Man.
So give me some thoughts on this, Angelo. Who are you looking at deep quarterback?
Okay. Deep. Oh man. Jared Goff, is that considered deep? I think, the thing is, the Rams' offensive line was awful last year, and they couldn't protect Jared Goff, and Jared Goff does not operate well outside a clean pocket. We know that. If they can keep Jared Goff clean, I think he can have a heck of a rebound year. My other one's kind of super deep, and it's Ryan Fitzpatrick.
Yeah.
I think Tua, without the OTAs, without potential of training, why to an offense he's not going to fully understand yet, and he's still at a high risk for injury. I think they sit him for a year at Flores. I think that whole organization knows they're not a playoff team yet.
Yeah.
And why would they risk their future chances by putting Tua out there too early? And I think Fitzpatrick, man, if you're in redraft or you're looking for, you're a contender in Dynasty and don't have a QB2 or a super flex spot, Ryan Fitzmagic might, you know what I mean? You might light it up.
Yep, that's true.
But yeah, he's definitely one of the ones I'm looking out for in the later rounds.
Definitely. What about you, Ryan? You got anybody that we hadn't talked about yet?
Yeah, I was actually excited about this one. It's Daniel Jones. I think we saw flashes last year. And that offense had 607 pass attempts between the two quarterbacks last year. Jones was on pace for about 3,700 yards in a 16-game season, which isn't bad for a rookie year, and somewhere around 30. And he had 24 touchdowns in just 12 games, so he easily would have hit that 30 mark. And that's with only getting 10 games from Golden Tate, 13 from Barkley, 8 from Ingram, 10 from Shepard. Without all of his receivers, basically it was just him throwing to Darius Slayton. With all that coming back, adding Andrew Thomas to the offensive line, and their defense still not being very good, forcing them to be in some shootouts, especially in the division, playing against offenses like Dallas and Philly twice a year. He's going to have to throw the ball a lot to keep them in games. It may not be pretty. There may be a bunch of turnovers, but you can see some heavy volume and some monster weeks out of them.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And you've been in a bunch of mocks, Ryan. And I've been buying Daniel Jones pretty much everywhere. Because if you look on a points per game basis, he was right there with Kyler Murray last year. I mean, they were almost neck and neck with points per game, and everyone's treating Kyler Murray like a first round superflex quarterback right now. So Daniel Jones is definitely in the conversation.
And he's a decent runner. He had 279 yards in 12 games starting last year.
Yep.
So he can give you some volume there too.
All right, so my late round guy is kind of the chalk guy. He's the easy pick. He's the low hanging fruit, and that's Drew Lock. With all the there now. With Judy being there and Hamler. Of course, they already had Sutton. Now they got Melvin Gordon in the backfield to go along with Phillip Lindsay. The weapons are definitely there. Drew Lock has to take that second year leap and use these weapons to the best of his ability. He wasn't terrible last year. He wasn't
Sorry, guys.
Your dog doesn't like my Drew Lock call. He wants to argue with me a little bit. But yeah, I think Drew Lock, takes that step. And I went and just looked real quick at Fantasy Pros just to see where Drew Lock was ranked. Obviously, it's super early in the season, but they got Drew Lock at QB 24 right now. I mean, that's basically drafted.
Yeah,
that definitely comes up as the offseason goes along. But Drew Lock is my pick for late round there. All right, let's see what the next question we got on here is. Let's go with so What the Fantasy. I don't even know what his real name is, but that's his Twitter name, What the Fantasy. He's asking, best year two player at each position. So we'll skip running back. We kind of did that already with Miles Sanders and them. So let's go with the receiver position. Give me a guy that hasn't already broken out. So we'll kind of ignore the AJ Browns and the DK Metcalfs and stuff like that. So let's go to you first, Angelo. Give me a receiver that you think has a chance to have a year two breakout this year.
There's Slayton. I think they didn't add anybody through free agency. They didn't add anybody in the NFL draft. I think he's the unquestioned number one option besides Evan Ingram in that offense. I mean, for me, I think he had a heck of a rookie year. I think he showed he has the ability to stretch the field. He did well in contested catch situations as well. I mean, for me, he's a really good, I guess, mid to late round target in Dynasty because, if he runs away with that, wide receiver one job in New York, that's a back end or better wide receiver two on a weekly basis. So I think for me at receiver, it's got to be Slayton.
Yeah, I love that call, and actually, I think the chemistry too between Slayton and Jones we saw last year.
Yeah, you're right.
Right off the bat, they seem to hit it off.
Yeah,
so that's going to go a long way to having a young quarterback for a long time. What about you, Ryan? Give me a receiver that you think has a year two breakout that hasn't already broken out.
I feel like I can't say Hollywood Brown, so I'm going to skip him. Man, I can't keep away from Deontay Johnson. He's a guy who I have no shares of. It's really upsetting. I think he has a role in that offense. He's going to kill underneath. He's going to be that dump off for Big Ben. They threw like 350 times last year, and when Roethlisberger comes back, they're going to eclipse that 550 mark again. And there's going to be a ton of volume to go around. He can only throw to Juju so much. Yep. And I think Deontay Johnson's their best receiver other than him. If not, their guy who can create the most separation, give him the biggest throwing windows. And he does – I don't like saying it like this because it sounds like a comparison because it's not at all. He runs a lot of the same routes and will be used in the same role that AB was there. Even though he's not the player he is, but he's going to be used in that way in the offensive bend, which should be a ton of volume. It'd be a huge breakout for him.
Good stuff. Yeah, I think y'all took two of the guys I was going to talk about, and I've already talked about Miles Boykin a little bit. So I'm going to go down to Miami and my boy Preston Williams.
Solid.
Forgot about how well he played before he got injured, and I think he comes back with Fitzpatrick and then eventually Tua. And that offense I think is going to grow. I think they did a very good job in the draft with getting the protection there for whoever the quarterback is. And they didn't draft a running back, which I think actually was a good thing. They got running backs that are good enough to work in that offense. So I think that skipping on a running back this year and probably getting one next year is definitely the way to go. And that offense is going to be pretty good. I mean, not top of the NFL or anything, but it'll be good enough to support two receivers in fantasy.
For sure.
Two receiver too. So. I love Preston Williams. All right. Next question we got is from Kid DFS, Jason McGuire on Twitter. He wants to know what OBJ's dynasty value is right now. It's been kind of all over the place. Angelo, we'll go to you first, man. If you're getting OBJ right now, where are you looking to draft him in startups?
I drafted him in a recent startup. I got him at like 303, I think it was. That's late for OBJ.
Yeah, for a receiver especially.
Yeah, right. And for me, I'm seeing a lot of that. I'm seeing a lot of 206 to mid threes. Because I think there's a ton of unknown. He didn't play well, but I think we have to understand is he was injured all year. He played through a sports hernia. Which is an extremely tough injury to play through, especially if you're a wide receiver of his caliber.
Yep.
You're not going to be able to perform on a consistent basis week in, week out. So, I think we know that he's, a top talent at the receiver position. The question is, will he show that again? And I get that's a question that kind of scares people, but we forget that he's, under 27 years old. He's top 3, I think, in receiving yards, touchdowns and targets, things like that. So it's like, he's in like that upper echelon of receivers at a under 27 at a younger age. So for me, I think it's a no-brainer buying him or drafting him around 205 or later. For me, I'm more comfortable I'd say late second, early third round with him.
Yeah,
Just because I think he can have another wide receiver, wide receiver one season. If he ends up, wide receiver 8 on the year, are any of us going to be surprised? Probably
nope,
not.
not at all.
And at that price, I think that's really solid value. But if he doesn't hit, I mean, I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. But as long as he's a Brown and Baker Mayfield throwing the football and he's healthy, I'll take the upside.
Agreed. What about you, Ryan? Where do you got him at?
Yeah, I have him in that high-end wide receiver 2 range right now with wide receiver 1 upside. Beckham's an unbelievable talent. And last year in that offense, it was just a mess. They didn't know what was going on. Baker was completely off with it. If you look at Odell on like player profile or some of their numbers, the target accuracy when he was targeted was 88th in the league. QB rating when targeting him was 97th in the league. But his average target distance was high. He was getting open. So his target separation was top 25 in the league at 23. So he was getting open, and he was getting open deep. The balls just weren't coming his way, and they weren't coming accurately. So that's something we have to count on Baker to get better, which we've seen him do it with bad QB performances with Eli, or at least average. And if we believe that Mayfield is a quarterback who's going to improve, which he should because he's still young and talented, I think Odell's a buy where he's at. 302, I love that range where he said. I'd buy him there all day. And I'd probably reach a little bit later or earlier on him too, just because I believe in the talent there.
Yep.
But that offense has to improve. There's no way. It underperformed so much last year.
Agreed, 100%. And wait till y'all hear this. So I'm gonna do a show promo as well when I kind of loop this in. So we're doing we finished our pros versus Joe's mock draft. So we're gonna have that podcast on June 9th. But we had 6 pros, 6 Joes. We did a mock draft, dynasty startup mock draft, PPR, just pretty standard stuff. And we finished that mock draft up about last week sometime. And I drafted OBJ, and guess where I got him at?
Man.
The 6-12. 6th round, 12th.
Stop it.
Stop.
I
No.
couldn't believe he was still sitting there. I was like, are you kidding me? OBJ
Stop.
in the 6th round? That is insane. So obviously I picked him up, scooped him up really quick. Very happy with my team. But I think you're right. I think more often than not, you're probably looking at him in the third rounds, top of the third, middle of the third. 6th round is just insane. I don't know how he fell that low. People just hating. I guess we have some Browns haters, and they just didn't want to get on their team.
Get zone.
That value.
Jeff, I was right when I said I knew what team was yours, by the way.
Yeah, I figured that's why I went ahead and gave it to you, because I knew you already knew. The way we do it, Angelo, is we do pros versus Joes. So I'm part of the mock draft, but Ryan's one of the judges. So I send the mock draft to like 4 judges, and they have to judge each team, based on the way the draft shook out. And Ryan, every year, he was able to pick my team because, we were on the show so much, he knows my players. So,
it was within like 5 minutes to look at it.
Yeah.
That's funny.
All right, so let me go back here. I had to jump into that mock draft to see where I got him, because I knew I had him pretty late there.
Love it. That's too late.
Yeah, that's way too late.
Too late.
Yeah, way too late. I mean, we're mock drafting in May, so that's probably why.
Yeah, very true.
Yeah, once you get close to the season, it'll change. All right, Rhinos on Twitter is asking us. I think he was watching the show earlier. I saw him commenting in some of the groups there. I don't know if he's still watching or not, but he's got 2 questions, some deep dive on some undrafted free agents. He wants to know about JaMycal Hasty and the 49ers. Is that going to be Shanahan's new toy to play with there? We'll go to you first, Angelo. What do you think of JaMycal Hasty with the 49ers?
I think it's interesting because I think it's him and Salvon Ahmed. I think that's the training camp battle we really have to pay attention to. Because even though Ahmed had an awful stock-killing combine, he has some ability. And if he can, if he can work in that system and Shanahan likes him, then he might have a role. We can see the opposite to JaMycal Hasty. JaMycal Hasty's a better pass catcher. I think he has a little more of a dynamic lateral skill set. So I think they're both really interesting runners because they bring a little different things to the table skill set wise. So you have to watch it shake out.
Yep.
Throughout the preseason. Watch their snaps, watch how they play, watch how they're picking up Shanahan's scheme, and then see who they keep. Because they'll probably keep 4 backs, If both of them are on the roster, I mean, I'm rostering both of them. So I think, that offense is too good, too potent. I mean, Raheem Mostert's a superstar. I mean, he was a league winner last year. So
Yep.
that's the type of upside you want, right? You want guys who are in offenses where they can provide you value. And the type of value Raheem Mostert provided you, he was an undrafted free agent, bounced around the NFL, and won leagues last year. That's what you can get with one of these guys. Do I think these guys are as talented as Mostert and as quick as Mostert? Most of them the fastest running backs in the NFL, probably the fastest, actually. Legitimate track sprinter. I don't know, but I think I want to find out if they can fit in Shanahan's offense. And that those are both of them are guys I'm trying to take in later rounds, because if I hit on one of them, that could be a league winner for me.
Yep, 100% agree. What about you, Ryan? What are your thoughts on Hasty?
Yeah, I think they're both deep stat. I think it's deep stash kind of guy, because I mean, they have Mostert, Coleman, Jeffrey Wilson's still there, but we saw the way they rotate backs last year, and if anybody goes down with how much they run, it doesn't take much for a guy to perform that offense. So deep leagues, I like the stash idea, but like you said, it's a camp battle thing where you're seeing who makes the team there. But I have no problem taking him as an undrafted free agent right now in fantasy.
Yep, agree 100%. I think that, I think Shanahan, both Kyle and Mike Shanahan, going back into the days where they were the Broncos, their system, the way they run it, I think you can plug in any running back, and that's how they kind of feel about it. They're kind of like, we're just going to pick up any running back and put it in our system, and they're going to be good. And it seems to be that way. And if Hasty gets that opportunity at any point in the season for what you got to pay for him right now, I think it's worth it. Even if you get him for 3, 4, 5 games, injuries, you're paying nothing for him right now. So I agree there. And he had one more question too, and I actually had to go and look this guy up because I didn't even know
how
deep it was. He wants to know J.J. Taylor with the Patriots. Is he the successor to James White in New England? Angelo, we'll go to you first, man. What do you think of Taylor?
That's a really good one. I think James White's contract's up after this year. So the answer is maybe. I think they signed Taylor to a 3-year contract and gave him a pretty nice bonus for an undrafted free agent. He's really if you haven't seen him, he's 5'5", really interesting player. Could be like a Boston Scott. I don't know if he's James White, but if they don't re-sign James White and James White does test free agency, that role in Bill Belichick's offense is one I always want on my rosters.
Agreed.
Because I think James he was a consistent RB2 week in, week out, nothing flashy. And when he did have the lead role when Sonny Michel went down in 2018, he was a top 5 running back for that stretch. And I don't think J.J. Taylor can be that whatsoever as a rusher. But even just as a receiver, I think the target volume for that role in Bill Belichick's offense will always be there. And if that's Taylor, that's huge, because we know Burkhead won't be there next year. Michelle won't be there next year. So it's going to be Harris and then question mark. We have no idea. So if it's Taylor, if Taylor is the second option in that offense and profiles more as a pass catcher, that's the guy I definitely want on my rosters. And you can get him for next to nothing, and he might be on your waiver wire right now in dynasty leagues.
Yep, definitely. Ryan, what are your thoughts on Taylor?
Yeah, it's funny. I actually knew him better than I knew Hasty, which is probably a bad thing. But I like what we can bring to him. He's a stash for post James White life. And I looked up their contracts after the season. White, Burkhead, and Brandon Bolden are all gone after 2021. And then you have Harris and Michelle there through 23. So that fits him in that receiving role completely.
Yep.
If he can separate himself from that. But for an undersized guy, they've showed that they're not afraid to use a guy like that. If he can play ball, Belichick's the kind of coach who will find a way to get him a role. He's definitely worth a stash, and for giving him some money and putting him on 3 years, why not?
Yep, agreed, 100%. Like I said, I had to look him up. I didn't even know. So I'm not even going to pretend I need.
No, he's interesting.
So I'm just going to take y'all expertise and just go with it on that.
For sure.
Ryan, we're going to go to you on this next one first because this is your team. The 2 rookies they drafted there, Duvernay and how do you say his last name? Is it Proche?
Proche.
Crochet. So the two receivers there. Who was the asked this question? Fantasy Wire HQ asked, who emerges first out of those two guys if you had to pick one?
I think it's going to be Devin Duvernay. I think they loved him. We talked about before. Harbaugh was ecstatic when they drafted him. They took him with their second, third round pick. It felt like they took him much later because they had all the early picks, but he's going to fill in that slot role. He has ridiculous hands. Well, they both do, but his hands, he catches everything. He has speed to burn once he has it. He's going to take Willie Snead's role, hopefully sooner rather than later. I think he's a guy who adds an extra element to that offense. As of now, Prochet is going to be a special teams guy. I could see him maybe returning punts and kicks through years 1 and 2, but they're starting to get deeper with the young receivers, and I think Duvernay is the guy who fits in with a major role in that offense.
Nice. What are your thoughts on Duvernay and Prochet?
For me, I think Duvernay is the one who can pop sooner. I'm not a big fan of Prochet in that offense. I think he's more of a precision route runner. That offense is gonna provide some volatility at the receiver position. I think Brown's the unquestioned one. Then we have Andrews as kind of the 1B, and then Boykin, and then question mark. So I think Duvernay can be that question mark because he has the ability to stretch the field. And I think he'll be extremely volatile, but I think he can pop sooner than Prochet can. I think Prochet, if he does have value, it'll be in PPR formats. I think for him, he might see a higher target share as his career goes on because he profiles as more, of that precision route runner, a lot of inside the numbers reception. So I like his game a lot. His tape was so much fun at SMU. So I like them both, but I think Duvernay might pop more in that offense and take the top off the defense a little bit.
Yeah, I have to agree there. I think that draft capital sort of gives Duvernay a little bit of in there. But I will say I have a soft place in my heart for Prochet because I was actually, scouting some of these deep guys before the draft. And I sent a note to Ryan like, hey, Ryan, watch this guy's tape and count how many one-handed catches this guy makes.
Unreal.
I mean,
Unreal.
He was catching one-handed catches where he didn't even have to. He was almost like he just knew he was going to catch it.
Yeah.
Probably with one-handed. So I would love to see him succeed, but I do think Duvernay is the one that you want to own there. If you want to own either one of those guys, it is Duvernay for me.
For sure.
The next question is from Shane is the worst on Twitter. And we kind of touched on this a little bit, so just touch on this real quick here. But He says, as a noted David Montgomery hater, any reason he should be ignoring his hate and buying David Montgomery. So, Angelo, I know you were talking about David Montgomery earlier. Kind of convince Shane here that he needs to buy David Montgomery a little bit.
I mean, I think what we kind of look at is what does the organization think of Montgomery? So when you look kind of back last year, they traded up to get him. Okay, they didn't have a lot of capital to do so. They did it anyways. They wanted David Montgomery as their lead back of the future. I don't know why they went into full committee mode and then Mike Davis tried out with 10 touches in week 1 against the Packers. I'm a Bears fan, so I get heated whenever I watch that game. But that didn't make any sense. Anyways, I think we saw what the Bears front office thinks of Montgomery when they passed on J.K. Dobbins and Cam Akers not once but twice. Twice. And those are some of the backs we think are the top 3-4 backs in this class, right? The Bears needed weapons offensively. If they didn't think Montgomery was going to have a sizable role and could break out this year and perform to what they think he can be, they would have drafted a back like Akers or Dobbins. And I wouldn't have been opposed to that. I'm a Bears fan. I love Montgomery, but I love Akers and Dobbins. Dobbins is one of my favorite backs in the class, specifically him. But I think a guy with, almost 1,100 total yards as a rookie, I've never seen a rookie with nearly 1,100 total yards just get smashed all over.
I could think of one rookie running back who ran like that.
People
and he's also better.
Speed or lack thereof, and explosiveness. But he's your classic James Conner type, Le'Veon Bell type of runner that's a rhythm back that needs a lot of touches to get going and to stay fantasy relevant. I think that's what the Bears do with him this year. I think he gets around 300 touches, and that's high
Yep.
So any back that gets 300 touches I'm trying to roster them. But that's the type of player Montgomery is. He's a volume back. He's not going to thrive off of efficiency. He never has, didn't even in college. But you're going to get from him is you might get a back with 1,300 yards and double-digit touchdowns. And if you get that, that's a surefire RB2.
Yep.
And I'm happy with that. And potential, like we said earlier, with the potential to have the backfield to himself in 2021, a full lead role. If Cohen's gone, they might sign or draft another back to supplement Montgomery, to complement him. But my backfield might be his, and that's rare to find in the NFL. So I'm taking my chance just for that reason alone, and for the fact that he might see 300 touch volume in the near future.
Good stuff. And Ryan, you had one guy you wanted to mention that was sort of in that same tier as a rookie receiver, a rookie running back that got a lot of hate. Who was that guy?
Yeah, it was Jordan Howard, man. He was the same way. He led the league in rushing, and everybody said he sucked. I don't know what it is about Bears running backs, and nobody respected when they perform, but he was the same way when he was there. He was a solid RB2 no matter what. And Montgomery, he did what he can catch.
Yeah, exactly. I'm with y'all both on that one. All right. Next one we got here is from Kyle Senra, a friend of ours. He's also part of GoingFor2.com as well. And Ryan, I'm going to go to you on this one, because I know you have a lot of your projections there, so you might have a good answer for us. I don't know if you can pull that up real quick or not, but you got it up? He wants to know your target distribution for the Broncos receiver, Noah Fant, Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton, and who you got there.
Okay, market share wise, I have Sutton with 22%, who ends up being 114 targets, 67 receptions. Jeudy, pretty solid, 18%, 63 receptions off 93 targets. And I have Fant around the same, 93 targets, but 57 receptions for him. So I'm all being fairly active. Judy's going to, I think, have a little bit less in the red zone department. I have with 4 touchdowns, where I have the other 2 scoring more. But I think you're going to see fairly even distribution, with a little bit more going to Sutton, just because he has that repertoire built with Locke. You can trust him to ball up to him. So I think he'll see a little more than the other 2, but I think they're all going to get decent enough volume where they can fantasy points.
What about you, Angelo? You think kind of the same thing, or you got a different thoughts?
For me, Sutton, Jeudy, and then Fant, and then Hamler, and question mark, whoever else, Hamilton's there, Z Gordon. But I think that the top 2 targets in that offense are undoubtedly Sutton and Jeudy. I think there's a reason they spent a first-round pick on Jeudy. That he's the slot receiver of this generation, in my opinion. I think I talk very highly of Jerry Jeudy. He is one of those guys that has, elite caliber movement traits, and that's very rare to find. And we're talking, these are guys that are the 1% of the 1% of athletes.
Yep.
And he has some qualities about him that are just truly special. And I liken him to Shadow Tucinko. And that's who I truly think he can become. But I also think that Cortland Sutton could be a superstar.
Yeah.
He was my wide receiver 1 in that draft class. And it's going to be interesting to see how they shake out. But I think the winner here is Drew Lock. So the winner here is definitely Drew Lock. But I think there might be some volatility, especially in the early season, especially now with COVID and everything going around, with all the uncertainty surrounding this. So, as we get later on in the year, we might see what it could shake out like in the future. But for right now, I think it's going to be clearly Sutton, Jeudy second, and then Fant third.
Yeah, I think I'm with y'all there as well. I think that's going to be the way it shakes out. And I'm practically buying Sutton anywhere I can, because people.
For sure. For sure.
They're low on him. They think, Jerry Judy's there now, and I'm
right.
It's dropped quite a bit, so it's all Sutton for me.
I do think Jeudy becomes their wide receiver 1 either year 2 or year 3, though. I agree with that portion.
Yep. All right, we got one last question, and then we'll do our Forgotten Fantasy Player. This is from Matt Hicks on Twitter, @TheFFEducator. He wants to know about Laviska Shenault and how he fits into the Jags offense. Angelo, we'll go to you first, man. What do you think of Laviska Shenault in this offense?
First, everybody knows I'm a big Chenault fan. I'm a Chenault believer. Um, I think the only thing that can truly hold him back is his durability and hurt him. I think he fits pretty well. I think Gruden's now there, and I think he brought him in for a reason. And also, the one thing you have to look out for, Leonard Fournette's not going to be there for this year.
Yep.
Laviska Shenault played a lot of running back at Colorado. He was a primary goal line back in 2018. He played everywhere: receiver, wildcat, quarterback, running back, like I mentioned. He played tight end as well. So he's one of the more versatile players in this whole class. And I think we see him take snaps at running back. And that's something to look out for, because if you're playing fantasy, what's the one thing you want? Dual eligibility.
Yep, exactly.
That's what we might get from him. Remember when Marquise Colson was a tight end? Like, remember how ridiculous that was?
Yes.
I don't think he'll be on that level. But we're looking at a guy who could get running back and wide receiver eligibility because of his versatile skill set. I think as a player, I think there's a question mark on who is he, as where's he fit. I think he's just going to get the ball. It was funny when you watch Colorado's tape in 2018, especially. It was like, all right, give Laviska Shenault the ball in any way we possibly can, and that's how we're going to run our offense. That's what McIntyre wanted to do, and it worked really well for the first 5 games of that year. Shenault was on top of Blitnikoff, and then he got hurt, and then it all fell apart. But with me, I think he's a good complement to Chark because he's going to be more of an underneath option. Might play a big slot role. I think D.D. Westbrook gets hurt by this a little bit as well. But Chark doesn't. For me, Chark kind of stays the same. But yeah, I like Shenault, and if he gets dual eligibility, that's the key. That would be huge.
That would be huge. It's funny because I went on to a different show a couple weeks ago, the Fancy Six Pack, and we talked about Shenault a little bit. And I was bringing up like player profile comps, and he was being comped to A.J. Brown. And then the host of the show actually brought up a comp from PFF that I thought was very interesting.
Oh boy, here we go.
I've had him comped to Saquon Barkley. I was like,
What?
Are you kidding me? I just thought that was funny. I had to bring that one up.
It's so hard to comp. I don't like stylistically. I like comp style wise, but like who they're gonna be. Okay, Laviska Shenault Jr. is not gonna be Saquon Barkley. They didn't play the same position. Okay,
right, exactly.
But for me, Laviska Chenault's one of those guys where he kind of has a unicorn. That's who he is. You have no idea who he is. He's a different type of player than we've seen. He's what we might have wanted Cordell Patterson to be. And I think that comp is, from a style perspective, makes sense because their size, their physical nature, and how well they move at their respective size. But Patterson was not a productive receiver in college in comparison to Shenault.
Right.
So even that comp has holes in it. So I don't know. I just think he's a unicorn. I mean, we will see what he truly is if we ever see him. So hopefully we do.
Yep, definitely. Ryan, what are your thoughts on Shenault?
Yeah, a lot of the same. I've actually had that same comparison with asterisk by it with the Patterson thing. He is a very different player. We haven't really seen much of it. I think he'd be a good part of that offense. I have him being fairly involved this year while he's on the field because they can move him around. They can create plays for him in space. They'll be able to just use him however they want as a wild card piece. Plus, he's a good receiver. He can work those underneath things. He's a good complement to Shark because he does a lot of things that work opposite of Shark's deep ball ability. And he can run catch, a lot of screen passes. And like I said, they can run on, put in the wildcat, do everything. Because, I mean, Gardner Minshew, they're going to have to find ways to make his life easier.
Yep.
And he's going to be they're going to be throwing the ball a lot more than they want to because that defense is atrocious this year.
Yep.
So they're going to be a team who's going to be forced to throw the ball, which is nothing but positives for those receivers. And Shenault could step up and be their second receiving threat because D.D. Westbrook is broken a lot. As much talk as Shenault is about being fragile, D.D.'s hurt a lot.
Yep.
Keelan Cole still a question mark. Tyler Eifert's hurt as we speak. Like they got Chris Thompson, also an injury concern.
Good point.
There's a lot of question marks there. He could easily step up and be hugely fantasy relevant.
Y'all are making me feel real good about my rookie drafts this past weekend. So I got Chenault at 205. So I'm excited about that.
It's a good spot. It's a good
Yeah.
spot.
Yeah,
Spot to
I
get
took
him.
him right
like
around
it.
there too.
I like it.
All right, that wraps up all the questions that we have for tonight. Let's go ahead and get into our Forgotten Fantasy Player. Normally I hit a drop at this point and got this nice little music going on here, but no drops tonight. So, Angelo, give us your Forgotten Fantasy Player.
Alfred Morris.
Nice.
That was for me. That was probably that I'll never forget it because that was the first league I won. That was a long time ago. That was the first league I won, and I just remember watching Robert Griffin III and Alfred Morris on three bases during his rookie year just tear it up.
Yep.
People forget he had 1,600 rushing yards. He was Alfred Morris 1,600. Like, you know what I mean? So that's when we talk about situation, meaning more than talent. Alfred Morris had the prerequisite skills to get the job done. He had really good anticipatory vision, had good lateral skill set, pretty strict there. Not a lot of speed, but he fit super well in the zone read.
Yep.
Super well.
I mean, we talked about it earlier. You know, Mike Shanahan, Kyle Shanahan offenses. You put anybody in there, you're going to have a star.
Hey, yeah, exactly, for sure.
I remember he was first round draft pick next year in fantasy.
Yep, he was. You're right.
Everywhere, like top 5.
Yep. He was a beast because I live here in DC, so I got to see it firsthand. So
yeah, he was awesome.
He was a beast. Yeah,
he was awesome.
He was definitely a beast. All right, man. That wraps the show up. We'll go to around the room here and just get your Twitter handle if you want to plug anything. Angelo, we'll go to you first, man. Give me your Twitter handle and whatever else you want to plug.
Awesome. Well, first, thank you guys for having me on. I really appreciate it. Had a blast. You can find me on angeloanalysis.com. And then you can also find me on Twitter at Angelo_fantasy or AngeloFF for the username. I just finished up my rookie profile on Keyshawn Vaughn. That's all up and available on the site. That's going to be free without subscription till midnight tonight if you want to check that out. And then next, I'm kind of doing one on Brian Edwards.
Nice.
His is going to be up hopefully by the end of the weekend. That'd be great. Denzel Mims is on the horizon, and so is A.J. Dillon. So those are the ones that are going to be coming next and being put on the website. I'll be putting those on Twitter as well. But yeah, thank you guys again for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man. A lot of fun. All right, Ryan, what you got?
Find me at Twitter, Ryan Surfoss at Fancy FB Connect. I've been setting up some going for 2 War Room episodes. We're going to have people come on, go 5 to 10 minutes, tell me a guy they're standing behind, maybe a little deeper drafts for this year who they're going to try to sell us on to pick up in the draft. We have some great people coming on. Matt Hicks coming on, John Lobb's coming on. Angelo, you're more than welcome to pop on for 5 to 10 minutes one night if you want to. But it should be a lot of fun. We have about 8 or 9 guys lined up at the time.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, the War Rooms were a real big hit before the draft, 10, 15-minute little quick hitters, and, they did really well. So Ryan's put together some stuff for the second half here, so good stuff. As always, guys, you can follow me at Jeff Lambert77. Hopefully next week I will be out of quarantine and back in the studio. But again, appreciate you, Angelo, coming on the show, man. It's
Anytime.
been a lot of fun. I think we covered a lot of stuff tonight, as you
Yeah,
got
it was awesome.
a lot of stuff. So be on the lookout, guys, for the podcast I mentioned earlier, the Pros versus Joes podcast. It'll be June 9th. I think we're going to have that. We're going to have Aton on the show. We're going to have John Lobb on the show. We're going to have JD from the GOAT District on the show. It's going to be an awesome show, guys. So be on the lookout for that. With that said, that's a wrap. Have a good night.